Ellen. So from a young age, Ellen cultivated a love of baking in her mother's kitchen. Her mother, a talented baker, inspired Ellen to explore the art of pastry. The only sweets allowed in her childhood home were homemade pastries. Ellen and her 4 sisters quickly learned to make their own desserts from scratch in order to satisfy their cravings. After years of making birthday cakes, holiday treats, and desserts for family and friends, Ellen sought professional training in order to take her baking to the next level. She went back to school to study baking and pastry arts at George Brown College in Toronto. Once she received her diploma, she immediately opened a small business from her home, catering an array of delicious pastry delicacies, Ellen Jane Desserts. Tonight, Ellen will be guiding you through a Seder staple, Charoset. Now I'd like to pass it over to Ellen and her husband, Warren, and I hope everyone has their aprons on. I know I have mine, so let's get started.
Thank you so much, Brittany, and thank you very much for inviting me, J&F, to do this presentation. To get the evening started, we're going to have my husband, Warren, give a little presentation about Charoset and how meaningful it is in our family.
Passover is a holiday that celebrates memory, both as a nation and as individuals. As a nation, we retell the story during the Seder of our slavery in Egypt and our redemption by God into freedom some 3,500 years ago. Individually, though, we recount our past Seders, the people that were at the table, the stories we shared, the discussions we had, and of course, the food. Though the order and rituals of the Seder have been the same for thousands of years, each Seder, in fact, is different, determined by who is attending and what is going on in the world at the time. Certainly, this year's Seder will be very different from all others. One of my greatest memories of past Passovers is of my grandfather, Jacob Grossman, Zichrono Livracha, making the Charoset. Zaydi Yarmia, as we called him, was known to make a number of special foods and drink, such as wine, plum liquor, pickles, sauerkraut, horseradish, and of course, Charoset. Each year before Pesach, the grandchildren would gather to watch as he assembled and mixed all the ingredients. Of course, back then it was pre-Cuisinart, so it was all done by hand, as Ellen will be doing today. Later, my father, Zichrono Livracha, using his father's recipe, took over this tradition of gathering the grandchildren to make the Charoset. And so this recipe has been handed down in our family as part of the pre-Pesach ritual. And very much as we do during the Seder each year, we add and plug in our own interpretations, ingredients, modifying as we go, and by that creating a new story or recipe to be remembered and retold and even savored at Seders to come.
Beautiful, thank you. And so you're all privileged tonight to get our great-grandfather's recipe. And I believe everyone has the recipe. So because you may not have Cuisinart, which is here, I assume because you're young professionals and you may not have all the appliances necessary, especially at Passover, we're going to do by hand. And if you don't have the ingredients, you still have time before Passover to try and assemble some of the ingredients. Now, it's a very simple recipe. It's walnuts, apples, honey, and of course, the big important item, manischewitz. And also, if anyone is allergic to nuts, you can do this same recipe and just not put the nuts in, and you could improvise and put different dried fruits. Okay, so I'm going to start, and I have also what I'd like to do before using the nuts is I toast them. You can use them in your oven or toaster oven, and just warm up the nuts because that brings the flavor out of your nuts. And if you don't like walnuts, or you're allergic to walnuts, you could use almonds, okay? This recipe calls for walnuts. And I already had toasted them, so they're already done. And it's half a cup of walnuts. So I'm going to put it on my cutting board. And this is going to be a very rustic type of Charoset recipe because I'm not using the Cuisinart. If one does have a Cuisinart, it takes like no time at all. You just put all the ingredients, blitz it, and your Charoset is done. I think it's actually more interesting to do it by hand because I like the texture better. So I'm going to just chop the nuts, keep them a little coarse. And it calls for half a cup. I hope you can see how I'm cutting it. Okay, I'm going to do a little bit more. And I'd say that looks pretty good. Now, if you don't like it chunky, you can keep cutting until it's much finer. So this is the first item I'm going to put in the bowl. I hope everyone can see that because I can't quite see the picture, so I don't know if you can see it. Okay, so that's in. Next, we're going to do the apples. So when I'm peeling apples, I like to do the top and the bottom first and then the sides. So you just hold it. And for apples, you can use any apples you like. You can use, this is a Golden Delicious. This is a red, I think it's a Fuji apple. And this is a Granny Smith. And I think it gives it, again, a nice flavoring if you mix your apples. So I'm just peeling the apples. And then again, we're going to cut it. If you like eating apples with the skin on, you can keep it on. Again, it's a different texture thing. Okay. I'm going to take out the core. Now it's interesting because different Charoset recipes vary from your background you come from, your ethnicity. So for example, there are different ingredients put into different recipes. If you're Italian, if you're Moroccan, if you're Sephardic. And it's really interesting to look at different recipes and then incorporate things, different spices and dried fruits that you like. So this one is straightforward, but I am going to do a second recipe that incorporates different food items. Okay, so I'm cutting it really small. I hope you can see. So what I did was I sliced it, and then I'm just going to cut it into small chunks. Be very careful with your fingers. Okay. So that's a little chunky, so I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller. And if you make this the night before, it has time for all the flavors to absorb. So it's actually better the longer it sits because then the wine gets into it and all the flavors of the various food items you've used. Okay, so I think that looks pretty nice. I have to do the rest of the apple, but I just want to show you the size of it. Again, if you like it much finer, then just keep chopping it. We're going to do a chunky version, very rustic. Okay, so what I'm doing is I cut the apple in half. I hope you can see that. And then I'm going to cut it lengthwise. So it's like matchsticks. And then from there, line it up and then just cut small pieces. And this is a very small dice. Okay. I hope you actually have your cutting boards out and your ingredients and you're following me, because then afterwards you can show me what your recipe looks like. Okay. I'm going to keep doing this. Warren, maybe you want to help me do an apple, peel an apple to save some time. You want to? Come on in. Come on, you don't have an apron on, but it's okay. You can join in. Come on. Yeah, you can peel an apple. Okay. So we're going to add a Granny Smith, which will, it's a little bit of a different taste, and I think will be really nice. Okay. So I know many of you didn't think you would be doing your own seders this year, but it's a challenge, but it's a lot of fun. And it gives you time to be very creative with different recipes, with Charoset, with doing matzo pizza. And there's lots of exciting food items you can do at Passover. I actually love the holiday. Even though it's extremely a lot of work, particularly for women.
For desserts.
Pardon?
For desserts especially.
Yeah, for desserts, which is what I do, is make Passover desserts. It's very gratifying because you can do a lot of experimentation and incorporate your regular cooking into your Passover recipes. Thanks, Warren, that's great. Okay. I know what you can do. Can you help me measure out the wine, please? Okay, so Warren's going to measure out the wine. I'm not making, I'm not going to do 3 apples. I think I'll just do the 2 because I just want to show you this recipe, how it is, and then I want to move on to the next one. So it's 1/3 cup of red wine. Now you usually like to add more wine, right? So Warren, when he makes it, the recipe usually adds a little bit more wine. So you can do that. You have to, like all recipes, you have to taste it and see how the flavor is. And if it's sort of flat, which sometimes this recipe is initially, just keep adding more wine, okay? I think you'll enjoy it. Not too much wine. So if, for example, if you were doing a Charoset recipe from Italy, they add prunes, they add walnuts, dates, apples, and they use chestnuts, which is very interesting. That's indigenous to Italy. So each grouping has their own specialty that they add. A very interesting one that I found out about when I was researching Charoset recipes is a recipe from Persia where, no, not Persia, one of the Sephardic recipes. They actually make Charoset balls, and it's called a Charoset truffle, and it's made with cardamom and cinnamon and allspice and cloves, and they make little balls. And then when you make your Hillel sandwich, you squish it together, the little ball. So it's really interesting to go and explore different recipes, and maybe every year try a different Charoset recipe. You don't have to stick with your same one. In our family, we do Saba's recipe that I'm showing you right now. And I also, believe it or not, guess who else got into the game in making Charoset? Martha Stewart. So Martha Stewart has an interesting recipe that sort of incorporates all the interesting items that one can use at Passover. And that's what I'm going to show you how to do next. So you have two different recipes that you can work with. Okay, so that's looking really good. I'm going to add a little cinnamon. Here's my cinnamon.
I usually add more.
Okay, so Warren just said when he makes it, he usually adds more than what it says. So it's 3. I'm going to cut it down a little bit because I've only used not quite like 1.5 apples. So it says a teaspoon of cinnamon. I'm going to add, well, he likes to add more anyhow, so I'm going to add a teaspoon of cinnamon. And we'll see how that tastes. Again, if I have to add more, I'll do. Okay, and 3 tablespoons of honey. So if you want to make it a little more Canadian rather than Ashkenazi, I'm going to add a little maple syrup. Now, it's hard to find maple syrup for Passover, but if you're able to find it, I think it gives a really nice touch. And again, don't worry about being exact in measurements. You have a little leeway, so you can just go with the flow. So I'm going to add a tablespoon of maple syrup instead of adding all the honey. And now I'm going to add the honey. I'm going to do like a heaping tablespoon of honey. We're going to add the wine, and let's see how that goes. Okay. Okay. So I'm just mixing it up. I hope you can all see.
A little bit of ginger would be nice too.
Okay, so if you want to be adventurous and you have some interesting spices on hand, you can add some ginger, which I have out here. And that would also give it a really nice flavor. Okay, so that's looking really good. I hope you can see, because I can't see myself, so I don't know if you're able to see what I'm doing. But that's what it looks like. I'm going to add the wine now. I don't think I'll add quite all of it. And Warren, if you want to get a little piece of matzah out and you can try the recipe, we'll let it sit a little bit and then you can try it. Okay. So again, if you make this the night before, it has an opportunity to absorb all the wine and all the flavors. So this is pretty chunky though. Maybe I would cut it a little finer. But overnight it will soften the apples. Okay, do you want to try? Okay. Are you going to come over here and try? Okay. Oh, I'm going to add a pinch of salt because that will help bring out the flavor too. Okay. Okay, I'd say it looks pretty nice. Now again, if you use a Cuisinart, it will be like a paste rather than chunky. But whatever you have handy, you have to use. Also, if you have a box grater or a grater, you can also grate the apples, which would be nice too. A different texture, but I'm not sure everyone would have a grater. So that's why I'm showing you how to do it with the knife. But if you have a grater, use it. It'll be great. Okay, how's it taste?
Very good. A little more wine.
A little bit more wine. Okay, so I'm going to save my wine for the next recipe. There's a lot of liquid in this, as you can see, but as it sits overnight, it will all get absorbed and it will get softer and it'll be delicious. Great. So we have one recipe down. This is Saba's recipe, and it's Zadie's. Right. And it's very straightforward. It doesn't have any other nuts in it or dried fruit. But now we're going to do one that's a little bit more interesting.
You could use this recipe as a base. Right?
Yeah. Yes. Now don't forget, most people, if you get a really good Charoset recipe, you can eat it throughout Pesach and just put it on your matzah. A lot of people, you don't just stop at the Seder, you keep eating it. Okay, so this recipe is Martha Stewart. And even though she's not really known for doing her Jewish recipes. This one is quite good. And it has, and if you want the recipe, I can give it to Rahama and she can give it to you. And it's really, it has dates, it has raisins. I have dried peach. You may not be able to get dried peach, but you can put that in. Dried figs, prunes. So whatever you want, you can add to it. I already have the mise en place already cut up. And also, if you don't like it sweet, you can add a dry red wine instead of a sweet wine. So I'm just going to empty this bowl. Okay, so I've already cut up some of the ingredients. So this is the date here. Just have to get it out. Okay, and I have the fig already cut up. I'm going to cut up some more apple, and I have prunes. And I didn't cut the raisins yet. I'm going to cut up some raisins. So this is sort of incorporating a lot of ingredients from different ethnic groups. From Turkish to Sephardic to Italian to Persian. So really anything goes, and it's really fun to explore different recipes from around the world and see what they add. I was reading that one group, I think it's Persian. They don't all do it, but sometimes what they do is they mound the charoset like a pyramid, and then they put their nuts around it. A different presentation to serve at your Seder. And I thought that's sort of fun, and then it goes around, you just scoop up some charoset and make your Hillel sandwich. So just gonna add the raisins, and I'm gonna add more apples. There's no apples yet. And for nuts, this recipe says you can add both almonds and walnuts. So I'm gonna do it. Again, I toasted the almonds just to bring out the flavor a little bit. Okay, now I'm gonna show you, if you happen to have a grater, because it'll be a different look. I'm gonna show you what it's like, not with that here. And just be mindful if you're using a grater that you don't cut your fingers or your nails. It's very sharp with grater. It's like potato lettuce, except we're doing apple here. So you can see it's a different look. It's not a diced look. It's like a scraped apple look. And that's fine. I like that actually. Let's see if I can brave doing these. And I'll cut myself. No, okay. That's not gonna work. Okay, let's peel one more apple. And then we're gonna mix it all together. Now this recipe, Warren, can you help me? Can you put some ginger? We're gonna add some ginger and some cinnamon and a touch of salt. So for the ginger, I need a teaspoon, please. Or actually put a half teaspoon, because ginger is very strong, so you don't want it overpowering all the other ingredients. And a teaspoon of cinnamon. And let me know, please. I'd love to hear how your recipes go. If you have any problems, you can call me up until Wednesday, late in the day, and I can help you, or if you need to troubleshoot, I can help you do that. Okay, so again, if you don't have a grater, don't worry about it. Just keep cutting small pieces. But this is pretty fast and it's easy too. I'm not sure if you all would have a grater available. Okay, cinnamon, a teaspoon. And we're gonna add some nuts. Now again, if you're allergic, don't put the nuts in, but you can use everything else and it's fabulous. Okay. Okay, great. Okay, so wine, the most important part of this recipe. Let's do 2 ounces of wine, please. Actually, let's just do what do we have here? Okay, so do you want to fill up to 2 ounces? That'll be great. I'm just going to add the last apple, and then we're going to add some nuts, and I'm going to show you the other recipe. I mean, this recipe, sorry. I mean, when it's finished, I'm going to show it to you. Okay, so. This is nice because it's both walnuts and
Small things.
there, I hope you can see okay. So the apples are great. You can see we have the shredded apples and all the ingredients. We're going to put the wine in. The only thing we're missing is a pinch of salt and the nuts. So just going to add a little bit. I'm just trying to speed things up here, so not too much. Okay, so if you were doing it nut-free, you would just keep it like this, mix it up, and that's great. Okay. Very careful when you're chopping. Always keep your thumb up. It's good to make this recipe also before the Seder. Even if you have to do it on Wednesday morning, do it in the morning, or preferably like Tuesday night. Just it helps meld all the flavors together. Okay, Warren, you better get your matzah ready.
It's ready.
You're ready. Okay, good. Okay. Here's the walnuts. Smells good. And now the almonds are a little trickier, so don't rush almonds because it's a harder nut. It is a little tricky to cut. Now, again, if you had a Cuisinart, this would take like no time at all. But I'm sure most of you have to do it by hand. And it's really great because it'll be exciting. You'll remember this is maybe the first time you've made Charoset. And hopefully this is the beginning of many more times that you will make it in the future and not rely on your parents or grandparents to make it. It's something that you can always contribute to the Seder and bring your own version. So it's exciting and it's fun. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Very hard to cut and look up. Okay. Great, I think we're done. And I'm just going to add one more ingredient. And we're going to mix it up and we're going to give it a try. Okay, so a little squeeze of lemon juice, fresh lemon. Okay, and that's it. So I hope you can see. Now this is a different taste because of all the different dried fruits that are in it. Okay. Okay. Look how nice that's looking. Yum. And the smell is fabulous. And the apples and the wine and the dried fruits and the ginger. Okay. So you can see it's very different. Look, I'm going to show you the first recipe. You can see it's different. And again, with this recipe, as with the other one, it will soften as it sits. That's great. Trust me, you'll be eating this like the whole dinner. Okay, oh, Warren has his matzah already. Very good. I think he's a little hungry. Okay, so tell me how it tastes. Ready? Okay. Mmm, beautiful. Okay, come and see. He wants to chew in private. Okay. Good? Okay, we did well. He says it's good. So here are the two different ones. This is the simpler recipe. This is the one with more ingredients. And again, you can add whatever you like. There's no right or wrong when you're making charoset. And even some people add bananas, which is really nice. And you wouldn't know you're eating a banana, but they do put it in. So I think we're ready for questions. And you can improvise. Like, this is just a general recipe. You can add whatever you like. So any questions? I'm ready. I'm finished with the two recipes. So.
Sure. Okay. So thank you so much, Ellen, so far. So I'm gonna, since we're a small group here, I'll just maybe unmute everyone if it's easier, or if you would like to, you can also send a message in the comments as well.
I did. I called quite a few people today. A lot of the phones just ring. Actually, I can't understand. I'll try again tomorrow. But a lot of them, I got.
Maybe we'll just. Okay, we'll just keep it muted so far. So, any questions, anyone?
I guess it was straightforward.
I guess so. I guess so.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Okay. I think so. Unless anything else? No.
Thank you for doing this, Ellen. It's Miriam Rosenberg. Hope you are all well, and we wish you.
If you wanted to, from there, you can add like a little bit of ginger, a little allspice if you want. You could add some other dry ingredients if you have them, like dates or raisins and whatever you want. But that's great. I'm very impressed.
Ellen, I have a question actually. How long would you say the charosets last if they're covered properly in the fridge? Like a week, less than that?
I would say maybe around 3 days. 3 days or 4 days.
Okay, good to know. Okay, any other questions? Okay, so if not, I'm going to just wrap up, and thank you so much, Ellen, on behalf of everyone here, on behalf of JNF. Thank you so much for sharing the recipes with us tonight. And I know you mentioned you're happy to share the Martha Stewart recipe, so definitely pass that along. And for anyone who wants to view this again, we'll be sharing the video on our Facebook page, so you can follow along with Ellen at home.
Okay. And are you going to mention that I'm
oh, yes.
complimentary desserts?
Yes, so something very nice that Ellen is doing is for everyone who participated this evening, she's going to be doing a random giveaway for 3 lucky winners. So definitely stay tuned for your email inboxes. We'll be picking 3 people to get a dessert from Ellen that's kosher or Passover, and I'll provide you with the pickup information as well. It'll be tomorrow afternoon.
Okay.
So thank you so much for that, Ellen.
Pleasure.
Okay. And yeah, happy Pesach, everyone, and have a wonderful evening. Stay healthy and stay safe.
Great.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.